I'm Luke Summerhays, and I love Oshawott. Sea otters are really amazing animals. For starters, of course, they're very, very cute. They have adorable faces, tiny little fingers and toes, and they mate for life, holding paws and floating around together. On top of that, sea otters are very intelligent and resourceful animals. They join crows, octopus, and primates like us on the short list of animals which use tools. Otters have been observed cleverly using rocks and shells to break things apart and forage for food. They're also strong. They are the only marine mammal which have been observed lifting up rocks on the sea floor to search under them. Oshawott is the last of our Generation 5 starters. An otter itself, it has a cute face with adolescent freckles. On its tummy, it wears a small shell, which it uses just like its real-life counterparts. Pokemon Black 2 and White 2 tell us, "The Scowchop on its stomach isn't just used for battle. It can be used to break open hard berries as well." Beyond this, Oshawott can wield its shell even more deftly, honing its skills like a young boy training with a wooden sword. Pokemon Black tells us, "It fights using the Scowchop on its stomach. In response to an attack, it retaliates immediately by slashing." While Pokemon White tells us, "The Scowchop on its stomach is made from the same element as its claws. It detaches the Scowchop for use as a blade." When I first read those Pokedex entries, I assumed Scowchop was just a real kind of shell. It's actually a portmanteau of scallop, which is a type of shellfish, and the verb chop. In Legends Arceus, we learn the origin of this name. This Pokemon from the Unova region uses the shell on its belly as a weapon to cut down its foes. Thus, I've conferred upon this shell the name Scalchop. As for the name Oshawott itself, it incorporates the ocean, perhaps the sh of shell, and the ot of otter. The Japanese name is Mijumaru, combining Mizu or water, Mijuku meaning immature, and Maru, as is often found at the end of young boys' names in Japanese. At level 17, the young boy grows up a little and becomes Dewott. I've talked before on this podcast, and will talk at length any time an opportunity is given to me, about the samurai. The samurai were a warrior class in Japan for around a millennium, and though the name means servant, they were the ruling class for a large portion of that history. They fascinate me. They were obsessed with bravery, yet prone to barbarism. They were artful and cultured, but in many ways it was a facade to hide their warrior hearts. They prided themselves on their honour, yet they usurped power from the emperor they supposedly served. Dewott is a samurai of an otter, stood far more like a human than its pudgy round younger form. It wields its Scowchops like deadly blades, storing them on its sides like swords, and the fur on its legs is reminiscent of the loose trousers worn by samurai into battle. Pokemon Black tells us, "Strict training is how it learns its flowing double Scowchop technique." The double sword technique was famously used by Miyamoto Musashi. He honed his art and taught it in the Edo period, the twilight of the samurai. And in this time much of the modern image of the samurai solidified. With no wars to fight, one-on-one swordsmanship was more important than archery or spear work. Many schools opened, and young men trained, wrote at length about honour, and fought duels. Pokemon White tells us, "Scowchop techniques differ from one Dewott to another. It never neglects maintaining its Scowchops." And Black 2 and White 2 tell us, "As a result of strict training, each Dewott learns different forms for using the Scowchops." According to Legends Arceus, Dewott even sparred with human swordsmen. Its exquisite double Scowchop technique is likely the result of daily training, and it can send even masters of the blade fleeing in defeat. The English name combines the do of duel, or perhaps Dew to maintain the water connection with Otter. The Japanese name is Futachimaru, which means two-sword son, and is incredibly cool. Dewott is a brash young warrior, or perhaps a foot soldier. It can still develop and become a mighty general when, at level 36, it evolves into Samurott. Samurott is no longer an otter, but a much larger marine mammal, like perhaps a sea lion. In an interview, Ken Sugimori, Pokemon's lead artist, discussed taking a trip to the aquarium to study sea otters, during which he was impressed by the sea lions. From this trip, Samurott was born. Samurott has more armour than its predecessors, as well as fearsome facial hair. The Scowchops have been replaced with even more sword-like scimitars. Pokemon Black tells us, "One swing of the sword incorporated in its armour can fell an opponent. A simple glare from one of them quiets everybody." A Pokemon White tells us, "Part of the armour on its anterior legs becomes a giant sword. Its cry alone is enough to intimidate most enemies." Pokemon Black 2 and White 2 reference Samurott's ability to recreate the common trope of anime and samurai movies in which an opponent is cut down in an instant. In the time it takes a foe to blink, it can draw and sheath the scimitars attached to its front legs. Welcome back to Does Andy Remember Gen 5 Pokemon?
And if so, does he have any thoughts about... Oh, you say welcome back. We've not done one yet.
We did do Victini, kinda.
Oh, did we? Oh, okay. I apologise.
This is the second time you've forgotten that you did Victini, because you forgot about it on the draft as well.
It's a very confusing Pokemon, alright.
Well, this week we're talking about Oshawott.
I remember Oshawott.
Do you have any feelings about him, or you just remember he exists?
Oh, well, okay, I definitely remember he exists. Tick. Do I have any feelings? Yeah, I like Oshawott. Oshawott evolves into Dewott at level 17 after learning Razor Shell. That's a thought. Good thought, huh? Yeah, deep, detailed.
I think it evolves whether it learns the move or not.
Well, yeah, but it learns the move and then it evolves. It's very exciting. Because it's like, oh yes, a good sounding move, and good for beating the second gym leader in White 2. Fun fact.
There you go.
I'll tell you what, White 2, really, really hard at the start.
Oh yeah? So you've started it then?
Yeah, well, I suppose I should probably update you on the rest of that story. The very cheap copy of Pokemon Black 2 that I found.
Oh yeah, it was Black 2 you ordered, okay.
Yeah, it wasn't a copy of Black 2, was it? It was just a box. Some would say quite an expensive box, considering it was just a box. So I continued my hunt for several more days until I found a reasonable copy of Pokemon White 2. So now I have a box for Black 2 and a copy of White 2.
Did the copy of White 2 come without a box?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, perfect. So you've got a White 2 and a Black 2 box.
I've almost got a complete box. But yes, the answer is I'm using Oshawott as my starter there, and it's a good boy, isn't it? I like Oshawott, it's cute. And obviously Samurott is a cool, bit edgy, but it's cool dude, isn't it? I don't think I picked Oshawott originally. I think I picked Tepic because of my default fire, but I think I was always a bit envious of Oshawott. Like I think I was a bit burnt out by not really loving Empoleon as much from the previous gen. So, but no, actually, I've come around on Samurott. I think I thought it was a bit immature at the time, maybe, but now I just think, yeah, you're right. You're like a cool Zinogre.
It's a samurai. How can you go wrong?
I'm sure many samurais have gone wrong.
Oh, they did heinous things, yeah. As I'll go into in the episode.
Really?
A little bit. Were you an Oshawott boy in Legends?
No. What was the other? Oh no, that was a Rowlet. Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, Rowlet's the only acceptable face of grass, I think. So you've got to pick it when it's there.
Samurott has a helmet on its head which resembles a twisting seashell. A suit of samurai armour very much like this, believed to have originated in the Edo period, is on display in the Tokyo Natural History Museum. When I saw it, I also wondered if it inspired Slowking. Many of these elaborate types of helmet were made in the Edo period because, well, they didn't actually have to be worn into battle. They could just be kept on the mantelpiece as a display item. So you get all kinds of shell-shaped helmets and fish-shaped helmets and other nonsense that isn't really practical. The wide tail of Samurott is similar to a war fan, as a general would have actually used to direct armies in medieval Japan. Generals would sometimes lead the charge, but more often stand back and use this fan to direct their soldiers. Samurott is, like many of the best water types, a more defensive Pokemon and not especially fast, so it does fit this role. In Legends Arceus, Oshawott was again one of the 3 available starters. This time, it can evolve into a Hisuian form of Samurott, with a secondary dark typing. This version, with its wave-like pattern, is less like a lordly general and more like a ronin, one of the many samurai who, when they found themselves without a master, became mercenaries or even bandits. Legends Arceus tells us, "Hard of heart and deft of blade, this rare form of Samurott is a product of the Pokemon's evolution in the region of Hisui. Its turbulent blows crash into foes like ceaseless pounding waves." Word Ronin even comes from the word wave, as they are carried from job to job like a floating leaf at the mercy of the waves. This form of Samurott has a unique move, Ceaseless Edge, which allows it to lay down spikes while attacking. Unlike its Unovan cousin, the general who sits back, this Ronin was born to charge into battle and die gloriously. The name Samurott obviously combines otter with samurai. The Japanese name is Daikenki, meaning Great Demon Sword, which is of course sick as hell. Famously, the 3 evolutionary families of the Gen 5 starters are based on 3 empires. China makes sense with Pignite, and whether Snivy is specifically France, or just a vague amalgamation with European powers, they are comparable, particularly during the colonial periods when they would have met Japan. Japan itself, though, is a strange example of an empire. The imperial family has reigned for millennia, somewhere between 1500 and 2500 years, depending on how true certain mythical texts are. Still, Japan is a pretty small island, and although the title of emperor was chosen to reflect equal standing with the Chinese emperor, the disparity in actual power is large. Additionally, the emperor wasn't even the real source of power for much of history at all. Power was usually usurped, at first by regents and then by the samurai, with final ultimate authority resting with a military leader called the shogun. When the emperor did resume power, it coincided with Japan modernizing and attempting to ape European colonial actions, resulting in the shameful history of Japan in the first half of the 20th century. With both light and dark, great deeds and terrible, the samurai are represented well by the 2 versions of Samurott. Music for Luke Loves Pokemon is composed by Jonathan Cromie. Artwork for the show is by Katie Groves. Writing, producing and editing is by me, Luke Summerhays, while funding is provided by lovely listeners at patreon.com/podcastiopodcastius. Our next Pokemon will be Patrat and Lillipup, so if you have thoughts about those or any other monsters, hit me up with a DM or an email to lukelovespkmn@gmail.com. If you like this podcast, please rate and review wherever you're listening, or tell a friend. And if you want to hear more Pokemon chatter from me, head on over to twitch.tv/lukelovespkmn, where I stream most Friday nights from 9 PM. I haven't made it for the past few weeks, but I'm feeling back up to it now. And even if you don't feel like doing any of that, thank you so much just for listening. I love Oshawott, and remember, I love you too.